Hello.
Hey, Bo, how are you?
I'm doing good, Wade. Get yourself situated?
It's awesome. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to do my intro, and then I'll get you introduced, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right. Sounds great. 1 second. 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Digital Voices. My name is Bo Tiffany. We share what's on our hearts, what's on our minds. We talk to interesting people and share stories about one another. The true way to learn is to hear each other's experiences and kind of get the background of what makes us who we are and what drives us. And with that said, I have a special guest today, Mr. Wade Ayer. Wade is a champion. He is a war hero. He is a father. He is a musician. He is someone that has turned his own adversities into a movement that's become a cause, and other people are getting on board with that. And so I want to say thank you for coming on board Digital Voices today. And how are you doing today, Wade?
I'm doing fine. Yourself?
I'm doing great. So I am excited to have you on, sir. The way that I reached out was because I was in shoes similar to yours, not quite as tragic, but equally as bad. And I reached out and found myself in the same crack that a lot of us fall in due to the issues with legislation and some of the other things that when medical errors happen, there's no recourse for people like us currently. And there used to be. I think the system might have been taken advantage of, and so they tried to install some safeguards to prevent that, but in doing so have completely neglected all the victims, in my opinion. I don't know if that's the greatest way to open this, but it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And so when I connected with you, and I connected with Steve Burrows, and I connected with Christine Sinicki, and some of these other great people, part of what I experienced was information that was something I really needed. And the other part was this awareness that there's currently a movement to reform our system. When medical errors are the third leading cause of death, we need to step up to the plate and make some changes. And you've done a lot to change the system. Currently, you have 4 bills that have been passed. You have to.
Well, they have not been passed.
Oh, they're in. Okay. Why don't you give me?
They were introduced.
Okay, so introduced currently, but things that we're trying to reform the system to prevent some of these catastrophes. I think Steve said it best. You have the initial error. We're all human. Oops. But transparency, accountability, and honesty, and then an apology go a long way when you sometimes handle it in the way that they handle it with cover-ups and changing records and just a lot of shady, illegal things. It undermines the whole process and really creates secondary and third injury rather than just the initial oops. So I'm kind of jumping ahead. One of the things I like to do is kind of get to know you, who you are as a person. So that's kind of the intro for you. I know it's a lot, but let me kind of take you back. So you're from Wisconsin, correct?
Yes. Grew up in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Okay. And then you had a pretty stable family. Your family stayed married, correct? Mom and dad?
Correct.
And then
still alive. It was just there.
Oh, excellent. And then how many siblings did you have other than your sister?
I had 2 older sisters.
Okay.
1 passed.
Gotcha. So started out in Waukesha. I know that you started playing guitar, so kind of musically inclined at an early age, age 11. Got into the band situation. Tell me a little bit about that. What spurred your musical creativity? Is that something that came from the family, or were you exposed to it externally?
A buddy of mine started playing drums, and he said he needed a guitar player. So he designated me to be the guitar player. And then it obviously just became fun.
Right.
And then it was just a whole life of playing the guitar.
Awesome. And I know that you write a lot of your own music too, not just covers, right?
Correct. My life is one big kind of little bit of a story. The songs that I've written.
Yeah. So being able to express and share your story through your songs, I think that's what a lot of us musicians can relate to. So that's wonderful. So you haven't quit. You still play. Is that correct?
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. I have 5 guitars. Play every day.
It's a way to. I also play. I've been playing since I was 25, so I'm 46 now. So I guess 21 years.
Wow.
But it's my Zen time.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of meditation, but that to me is my meditation. So I don't know if you're like that too, but
yeah, that's a good assessment.
Yeah, it's a good way to start the day or end the day, depending on the day.
Yep. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. So, went through high school, played in a band. You guys thought you were pretty good. Were you playing larger venues? Just a lot for school? Tell me about that.
We played at a county fair when I was like 16 or 17, headlined it. So,
awesome.
We're good.
Yeah.
Yeah. My buddies that I played, they're still in local bands, and they've gone on to do some very big things. They are 100% musicians, meaning they don't have another job. That's it.
Right. Well, anything I might have heard of?
Well, my good friend from grade school, I don't know if you've heard of Willie Porter Band.
I have.
Down here in Milwaukee. He's the drummer for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he plays in Led Zeppelin band called No Quarter, and there's a large following there.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Yeah, I have a lot of interviews that I've done with various musicians, and I enjoy their stories too. Typically, all of us are a little bit more creative in that aspect, and so our journeys are a little unique. At least I find.
Yeah. It's awesome.
So, yeah. So after high school, you went into the Navy. What spurred you into serving for our country?
Well, honestly, I wanted to see the world, and then, and then working on top of a flight deck, aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty exciting.
Well, and that was the lead ship, right? The U.S.S. Nimitz. That's the lead ship in her class. Is that correct?
That is a fact. It's Nimitz class.
Yeah. So that's an honor.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was an adventure. No kidding. It's hard to top.
So 2 years on the flight decks refueling jets. So that you're on the front line.
Yeah, that's a very dangerous place.
Yeah, I've always heard that. I've known some other people that have served, and I always hear that the flight deck is probably the most dangerous place to be on that ship. So, any great experiences? Okay.
Huge flight deck fire.
Wow.
Huge. Yeah. It was obviously an accident, but a guy was testing the machine guns on, it was an A6, and the machine gun was not pinned for safety, and shot up the entire bow, and all the airplanes were fully fueled.
Oh.
So, yeah, imagine a whole football field on fire.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, a couple people died in that situation.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. So, obviously some adventure there, some experiences. What kind of things did you take away from service that helped carry you into what you went into?
Well, they gave me some leadership roles. At I was like 21, and they put me in flight deck control, and which from there, I was in charge of about 100 men, and so that's where one of the things I took along was the leadership and the skills that came along with it.
Now, I know that you've gotten like the Bronze Star, the National Defense Medal, Armed Forces. I kind of want to go through just because I feel like it's an honor to be able to share this with our listeners. There's a C
Okay.
service deployment ribbons that you've gotten, the Southwest Asia Service Medal, the Bronze Star, National Defense Medal, Armed Forces Expeditionary Medal, Honorary Discharge, and then Operation Desert Storm Veteran. So
Correct.
you really went through the service kind of during the time when we just got back in. I mean, so we're looking back at the early 90s, late 80s. And so we were just getting back into, well, we just started war over in the Middle East. And that's where you obviously were just deployed for Operation Desert Storm.
Yeah, I was at the Persian Gulf.
So were you enlisted previous to us going to war, or was it just after? Because I know it was just around that time.
You know, I came in 1988.
Okay. And when did we start war then? Was that 92 or was that?
No, it was 91.
91.
So August 2nd, 91 is when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And then the actual combat started, I think it was like January 5th. 1990 is when Iraq invaded Kuwait. And then January, I think it was like 15th, is when the actual combat situation took place.
And that had to been, obviously weren't prepared for it, but you were. I mean, you were already enlisted for 2 years and had been serving. But I mean, that's, you know, I have kind of a stepsister that ended up being in the reserves, but then got called over, and for her, it kind of blew her mind. Were you prepared for that?
Yeah. By that time, it's kind of, you know, well, I'm out in the middle of the Gulf, out in the ocean, so everything kind of looks the same.
Sure.
You know, but on a day-to-day situation, I mean, everything was kind of the same. And planes left, they came back. But, you know, there were some other situations that arose while we were there, you know, but kind of, yeah, I won't go into so much in detail, but
sure, no problem.
But the problem, or what I'm trying to point out is that at times you're quickly reminded that you were in a combat zone.
It for you, getting out of the service, you enlisted for 4 years, and I know that there is an honorable discharge there. Were you injured? Did you come home because of the things that were going on at home?
Yeah, my family's from home, but when I got out, I stayed in the reserves as well.
Okay.
So I did a 2, maybe 3 more years with reserves. I think it was 2, and then I went to college.
Okay.
And went for electronic engineering.
So you've always been.
And then after that,
you're kind of a driven guy. I like that. I am too. Sitting down and staying stationary isn't in the cards for me. I have to apply myself some way, and it sounds like for you it was traveling the world, learning some tools in the service, getting out. Then you went straight into college. Were your parents? I mean, to me, apple never falls far from the tree. Can we? Is it safe to say that mom and dad really installed this ethic in you, or where did you pick that up?
No, I think my parents are driven people. My dad was in the service as well.
Okay.
So he was at one point accepted to West Point. He never attended, but he could have. Sure.
Well, that's an honor in itself.
If he was going to stay in, he would have gone to West Point, but he opted to come home and go to college just like I did.
I know that Dad wrote 2 books too. The second one we'll get into, but the first one that he wrote, what spurred him into initially becoming an author?
My dad has an English degree, so he's always written stories and you know, personal stories. Some of it's pretty interesting stuff, actually. Even though he's told me, so I know I don't have to read the book. I already know his personal stories.
Sure.
But they're pretty interesting, actually.
It's a small percentage that can make a platform for their voice, and it sounds like both of you kind of did that in your own ways. So let me
absolutely.
Let me ask you a little bit about your sister.
Okay.
So I know that, obviously your father wrote a book that I mentioned. Just for our listeners, it's called the Who's Next Club, A Cosmetic Surgery Disaster. And Wade's father is Donald Ayer, and you will be able to find this online, although I'm not sure. It looks like it's out of print because it was a limited availability, but it is on Kindle. So if anybody wants to download that, I would highly recommend that. Dad, so September 25th of 2003, your sister Julie went in for cosmetic surgery in Florida, and she didn't walk out. Tell me, what was the relationship with Julie? Were you really tight with the whole family, I would assume?
Yes, very, especially my sister Julie. She was growing up, we went to middle school together, grade school, middle school, high school. She's 3 years older than me. We've always, we'd go out and do things together, go running. Very, very close. Very, very close.
So she went in for just a regular cosmetic surgery back in 2003. What happened and what started the journey?
Yeah. So my sister moved to Florida, okay? And so this is in Sarasota, Florida. And I'm living in the Midwest at that time, living in Chicago. But, no, actually, I'm sorry. I was living in Wisconsin. But I was working in Indiana, and I get a phone call from my dad, and he said, Julie went into cosmetic surgery today, and they can't wake her up. She's on life support. She has very little to any brain activity going on right now. And my heart stopped. I knew right then and there that this was bad news and very severe.
Right.
And so I stopped what I was doing at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, got my car, came back home, got with my other sister, and we got my parents. We flew down to Sarasota. My sister and I were asking her boyfriend at the time, of a boyfriend of 4 months, mind you, okay, and what was going on. And all he would say is, he doesn't know. They gave her some general anesthesia, and she fell asleep, and they can't wake her up. And it looks like it's a possible overdose. They don't know. So we didn't know. We had no idea.
How forthcoming were the doctors and the clinic that she went to? Were they able to provide information right away, or were they kind of reluctant to give it? Okay.
No. So this is where my life changed immediately. Okay. So we get down to Sarasota, go to the hospital, and I see my sister on essentially tubes, monitoring her heart. She's not breathing on her own, and she's like running in place like The Exorcist and throwing up. And the thing about it is I couldn't leave her to be not attended because she would probably choke on her own vomit. I mean, it's very
let me just
alarming.
Back this up. So you got down there, you went to the intensive care unit where she's being held in a private room or in a public area?
No, it was a private room.
Okay, so you went into the private room, but there's not an attendant. She looks like she's
they would come in and then they would leave, and go attend another room.
Sure. But when you arrived, you were saying that she was running in place. To me, that describes kind of a seizure. Was she
right?
So she was seizing when you walked in, and there was no one around. You didn't want to leave because you didn't want her to seize on her own, and perhaps, obviously, have a even worse result of the seizure, by passing away, potentially choking, whatever have you. So you had to wait until someone, as you're screaming and taking care of this. Frustrating. So I just wanted to paint that picture a little clearer. Sorry about that.
Yeah. The thing about it is, I understand what I'm trying to point out to the world is it doesn't look, when somebody's in a coma, they're just lying there. That's not always the case. She had, it was, and then there would be times that she would not be running in place, but she would just look straight ahead.
Gotcha.
Like her eyes were wide open and her eyes were like dilated. And, they would point, the doctors come in and put a flashlight to her eyes and she would not even blink.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of the scenario. And then, like 2 hours later, she started throwing up again and running in place. And now we're on day 2, all right? This is still going on.
Was there any activity? So this was just kind of secondary
Some.
and voluntary. Okay, so there was a little activity of cognition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they did see. They showed us this chart, and they're like, "Well, we do see some activity in her brain." Well, from there, it started. The whole thing started getting worse because the boyfriend is trying to make medical decisions, and he's not. They're not related,
right?
And so he eventually he takes us to court. Because if you remember what happened at that time, Terry Schiavo, the right to, Terry Schiavo's husband was going to remove her from life support because she was in a vegetative state. And by day 4 or 5, I knew within the first 24 hours of being down there, she was not going to make it. And I went back to the hospital in the middle of the night and said my goodbyes to her. I knew without a doubt. I'm not even a doctor. I knew.
Right.
This is common sense.
Yeah.
But then my sister and my mom and dad and I discussed this, and we knew that she wasn't going to make it, and we were going to withhold life support. Well, the boyfriend goes to court, gets it's called interested party, and essentially what it is that Florida law is kind of geared towards the elderly. So let's say you don't have a sibling or a loved one, a legal loved one, to make medical decisions on your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
It's called interested party.
Mm-hmm.
So he can meddle in the medical decision process.
Is this unique to Florida?
I believe it is.
Okay.
I've never heard it anywhere else.
Okay.
I didn't even know this could actually take place. Now, whether that law still changed, I doubt it's changed, but it's probably still in effect. So a boyfriend of a whole 4 months, we found out when we were down there that my sister was going to come home and break up with him over the phone. So now things are getting really just crazy. He won't let us have her off life support. She's now going into a fetal position. She's not looking anything like, like a human being. But then we knew we had to get back to Wisconsin. And my parents were down there in Florida for like 10 weeks. And the boyfriend calls the governor, Jeb Bush's office, and says, and alerts them that we are trying to take my sister off life support. And so what we've learned through, the lawyers and stuff, that they were not going to allow my sister off life support. And in fact, at one point, we did, and we were told that they were ordered to put the life support right back on. And I don't care anybody it's a hypoxic brain injury. There's no ever known recovery from a hypoxic brain injury. You don't recover.
Right.
And they already officially declared her legally in a persistent vegetative state. So my parents found a judge who kind of agreed with them that she should be off life support and she should be back to Wisconsin. So on a Sunday, the judge signed off on it, and they alerted the hospital that they were taking her by air ambulance back to Wisconsin. My dad went to the hospital, and he had to inform the boyfriend that legally that this was signed off on, and this is happening right now. and he started threatening my dad's life. There happened to be a police officer standing right next to him in the entryway, and my dad hands a phone to him, and he heard the threat of his life. And then 5 minutes later, my dad went up to my sister's room. The boyfriend came running in, and the police were already there. They put him up against the wall to detain him. He had a police escort with motorcycles and cars weaving in and out of neighborhoods to make sure that the boyfriend did not know where they were going. They alerted the police up in Wisconsin that this boyfriend may be on the way up. And so they had a police guard in my sister's room in Waukesha.
I had to break in. So to me, and probably most of our listeners, we're wondering, why in the heck didn't they just detain this guy? Like, put him in jail if he obviously made this threat, which the officer
I don't know.
Heard.
That's the one thing I've always kind of questioned.
Yeah, just having to sneak you out in this mass chaos so he doesn't know what direction you're going, and having to alert people that maybe there's this, as a police officer and as any agencies that might be listening, people, we shouldn't even get to that point. This is protection. Right. That's like rolling the dice to see what kind of crazy might come out of somebody that's just mentally unstable. So I apologize. Yeah. So you were able to get your sister then back to Wisconsin?
Yeah, they flew her back. I was at the airport in the top of December, and they took her to the hospital, but she ended up dying on her own. We never, they already they diagnosed that her breath and were being slowly but surely, she was on her way to dying on her own.
Right.
And so she ended up passing on her own. She passed on December 26th, which is, my mom loved Christmas, so that's my sister's way of making sure it wasn't on Christmas Day. And so now this is where it starts to even get more crazy, is that we still didn't know what happened. Oh, I need to backtrack. I really I didn't present a very critical piece of data to you.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, and this is where my perception of the medical community changed forever. All right, so I'm on day 2 of being down in Sarasota and trying to figure out what happened. And I'm walking down the hallway, and the nurse that oversees my sister's case pulled me into a janitor's closet. And she says, you need to get yourself a lawyer, a very good lawyer, because what I'm about to tell you, you didn't get it from me. Because if it is ever disclosed, I'll never be able to work again in the industry. I will lose my job. You need to investigate this. Propofol and Demerol, and she circled it, and with an exclamation point. Those two she goes, their charts are off. They cannot tell who gave what, when, where, why, how, and how much. I'm like, oh my God. Now keep this in mind. This was in a outpatient surgery.
Mm-hmm.
This was not in a hospital, right? So this nurse has nothing to do with that surgery. But it's the kind of the don't tell mentality.
Right.
And so, that I was listening to the world of silence and secrecy.
Yeah. So let me dig in. So she said, look, you need to look at these 2 drugs here. Circled them, exclamated point. Did she give you any more information, or what did you do with that information then when she gave it to you? Did you go out to another doctor?
I grabbed my dad. I said, something's up. She told me that they're lying.
Mm-hmm.
And so anyway, my sister died. We still don't know what the hell is going on. We don't even hear anything other than the Waukesha County Medical Examiner write accidental death. Okay, there's no investigation. We don't hear anything from the Florida Board of Health. Nothing. It's crickets. We have a funeral. Go to it. Time is still moving forward, right?
Right.
And
so you're trying to grieve. Just to recap, so you're trying to grieve. Your whole family is. But in the meantime, you have someone that pulled you aside and said, look, and so you know something's not right. So not even being able to get into the grieving, now you have all this stuff on your mind and you're going through all of this, what do we do?
Yeah.
So I could go ahead.
So by the way, so here's where it gets even more crazy, right? So my sister was moved, or she was at the hospital, right? And the doctor there that performed her surgery comes to the hospital and says, straight to me, he says, I gave her a light dose of anesthesia. I asked her to turn her head to the left and turn it to the right. And then she went to sleep right in the middle of the operation. And he lied to me, straight to my face.
And how did you find out that he lied? Because of the medical records themselves didn't match what he was telling you?
Yeah. Well, we'll get into that in a second here.
No, I'm just trying to keep it straight. That way, when we're all listening to this, it makes a little sense. So go ahead.
Well, so then, some time goes by, and we get a letter in the card. And it says, if you seek, Yah shall find the truth. I know what happened September 25th. And so my parents, and the letter came from Sarasota.
Probably the nurse.
So it just so happened. So my parents call ABC in Milwaukee, and they go live down to Tampa. Via, they had a live interview with my parents about this card.
Mm-hmm.
And they explained the story over the news that about what happened. And a surgical technician who happened to be filling in that day for a person that was on vacation came forward. And he went to ABC Tampa, and he went under the hood and told what happened. So this gets so crazy, it ends up on ABC 2020 in 2004, April of 2004.
So what did he disclose to the news and to the listeners?
Well, basically, the one thing I'm not going to, I won't disclose, because I'd like him to go talk to the prosecutor.
Sure.
But one thing he said to me was, my sister was completely knocked out before the surgery even started. Okay? Now keep this in mind. This doctor is only authorized by state medical law to administer general anesthesia. That's level 1. What that means is that general level 1 is basically you kind of go to the dentist and you would say they numb your jaw,
like a local,
right? You're not intubated,
right? Local anesthesia, so you're awake but you're numb to a certain degree,
right? And so when you're at level 3 anesthesia,
you're completely
by
under.
Florida state law, medical law, Florida state medical law, you have to be, you're completely intubated. You have to have an oxygen probe on you. You have to have, you're being ventilated. They're checking for all the vital signs. You're hooked up.
Just to clue our listeners in, so when you are put under an anesthesia, and especially if you're underneath to a level 3, the reason that they put those safeguards on is that anesthesia can affect your breathing. It can affect the involuntary muscles as well. And so when you're going down to these different levels, they monitor your vitals to find out what level you're at. It's not like you're able to tell them, or there's some test that you take. It's literally done by vitals. Isn't that correct?
That is a fact. That's a fact. These are all guidelines by a state medical law, and I'm going to get to that in a second. He goes to we find out later that I'm just going to call him Bruce. That's his name, but I won't say his last name. But I'm still in contact with him. No, I won't. But he went to the police immediately following the situation. Immediately. I still have the police transcript.
What year are we looking at now?
We're looking at 2004, early part of 2000. Well, actually, when he went to the police was September 25th, 2003, immediately after my sister went into the coma.
And so he filed a police report with the police. He was there as a witness, and just ironing this out, tell us the rest of the story.
Yep. And they also brought in other people on the staff.
You would think, wow, that would really raise some attention and some flags and really put the police behind your back in terms of sorting this all out and holding accountability.
Yeah, but we didn't know that this guy went to the police department.
Oh.
So then once this blows up in the air, like, now it's all over the news, the Florida Board of Health called me. And they're like, yeah, we got mud on our face. And, 4 months, I'm like, this is like 4 or 5 months later. You guys are just now calling me?
Right.
It's unbelievable.
So they call you, they said they got mud on their face. You have a physician and other staff that have come forward and filed a police report. This is 2004. What happens then?
Well, then they said that there'll be an investigation, and then they would probably remove his license. And they did. Okay, so now there's some more time that goes by. This is all dragged out. So they eventually, it's called the judge's recommended order. Okay, that's when they remove his license from Florida. Okay, and I end up getting a copy of the licensing removal, so I now know what happened that day. Okay, so this guy decides not to go with an anesthesiologist required by state medical law. He gave my sister 1,500 milligrams of propofol to a 120-pound woman.
Now, just
that's five times.
There we go.
5 times her body size.
5 times the recommended dosage for a person of her body weight. Gave it to her when he wasn't licensed. Gave it to her illegally to save cut costs. So. Yep,
exactly. It all comes down to money. You don't have to pay an anesthesiologist.
Right.
So he's cutting corners. He did it intentionally. So what do you?
To me, that sounds like murder. That's to me. I said to me as a layman, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners, that sounds like murder. Whether it's manslaughter.
Or real
yeah. Well, I mean, if you're giving someone 5 times the amount, whether he realized that was a mistake or not, he should never have even crossed that line. And so,
no.
For me, I find it, if the only thing that happened to him was his license was taken away for the state of Florida, which, by the way, does that inhibit him from working anywhere else in any of the other states?
We're gonna get to that. Okay.
I thought there was a good story there.
All right.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
I'm just I'm blown. My mind's already blown, but go ahead.
Well, it's gonna get more blown away here. It really will. So I now have the judge's recommended order. We go up to the Waukesha County medical examiner because she's the one who ruled accidental. Basically, it was a phone call. She just called down there, talked to the prosecutor, talked to the medical examiner down there, and they said, "Oh, it's an accident. No investigation." Right?
Right.
So she says, "Well, he didn't mean to kill your sister." Right? So, but at that time, I still have a friend who is an investigative reporter for a major TV station here in Milwaukee. And I said, I want them to explain how that's an accident. So they go up there to Waukesha County, Linda Brzezinski, and says, we'd like to conduct an interview with you about the Ayer Rubenzer case. She said, can't do that right now. Okay. Can you come back? So my buddy comes back 2 weeks later, and now she's getting pretty spooked out that we're not going away because there's cameras on her.
Right.
They come back, they schedule an appointment again, like 2 weeks later, and they come to the table or the front counter and hand them a corporate statement. It says, you know, we ensure the highest quality of blah, blah. It's basically a go-away statement. My buddy comes back and says, Wade, they can't answer anything about the case. There's no investigation. None. They can't even ask the bare facts of the case. So by now, she's getting really agitated because we're not going away. So she decides to order the 700-page transcripts to review the case. She sat on the case for 2 years. Put the head on my head.
So let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. Did the reason that she sit on it, because I went through this and I have my own experience that we can talk about later if you like, where they literally sat on things so that the timeline of the statute of limitations ran out. And then by the time things did surface, there was nothing I could do about it.
Right. There's many different reasons.
Okay.
Many, you know.
What other than
that?
What other reasons did you find? Only because I think this is all about awareness. So the tactics that they play when we become aware of them, that information becomes power for us because then we're aware of these are what they do.
When after the 2-year thing, the 2-year window, she sat on and she comes back and she goes, no, it's an accident. She snarled at us and said, they don't like to prosecute doctors, Mr. Ayer.
And this is here in Wisconsin, correct? Or is this Florida?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Wisconsin. Okay.
She goes, basically, if she ruled it otherwise, they would have to prosecute him.
Right.
So now, again, I got the judge's recommended order. I call Ed Brodsky's office. He's the DA in Sarasota. And I have to talk to assistant prosecutor, Karen Fraveleg. And I said, I have the data here, and we're going to review it. You're going to admit to me one of two things are going to happen. One, medical malpractice doctors are exempt from prosecution in the United States, or he's going to prison. She said, deal. Okay. I said, it says here that he broke a state medical law by not having an anesthesiologist present.
Right.
She says, Mr. Ayer, medical laws are not binding with any criminal law anywhere in the United States whatsoever. They're administrative code of ethics. That's it. He just broke an administrative code.
Right.
I said, that's unbelievable. That's the moment I knew that the medical laws, or no laws, are not in touch with the rest of the world that normal citizen has to play by.
Right.
Also, I pointed this out. So when my sister Bruce alerted that she had no pulse, he goes, doctor, she's not breathing. She's turning blue. And he wanted to do chest compressions immediately. The doctor said no. And he starts throwing a fit. And he starts screaming at him, and he starts yelling at another nurse that he doesn't, quote, doesn't need this shit today. He folded his arms. According to Bruce, he folded his arms to do nothing.
Like a child. Ugh.
Yeah. And he goes, and they're doing it to a bloody screaming match. And then finally, so this is what I pointed out to the prosecutor. He brings his front office lady in who holds no medical license whatsoever. to check for my sister's pulse using her thumb. You don't use a thumb to check pulse.
Because your thumb has your own pulse, by the way, listeners. Yeah,
right.
That's why people use their index and middle finger. So
now he's delaying qualified care.
Yeah.
And he's allowing somebody to practice medicine on my sister without a license.
And the fact that it took how long just to get this information? This is years by now.
Oh, years. And so now I pointed out to her, hey, you know what? He allowed somebody to practice medicine without a license. He's also informed consent. We're going to remind him to get informed consent. And she stood there and paused for like 5 seconds, and she said, "You are correct, Mr. Ayer. Medical malpractice doctors are exempt from prosecution in the United States. You know what's going on. Everyone knows what's going on. The doctors are in it. The insurance companies cover for it. The AMA, they all know about it. You need to get a hold of your congressman immediately." And she did nothing. She never prosecuted the guy. And that was it. He did lose his license. He ended up getting a prosecution from another surgery after the investigation. They learned that his administrative aide was giving out anesthesia, acting as an anesthesiologist, and got like a minor felony. And eventually, it's unbelievable. Eventually, he got a license in Pennsylvania.
And that's where we're coming full circle because, again, so if for our listeners, if your doctor has his license yanked from, in Wade's case, Florida, that doctor has 49 other states that he could potentially still get a medical license to practice in.
And by the way, in Wisconsin and in Pennsylvania, you can have a felony on your record directly related to your industry and still practice.
So who and where are the standards coming from for our physicians, and who is enforcing them?
It's the, like it's like the hospital associations. Each state has their own standards.
I find that interesting. Their own standard, and why there's not a unionized. Let me just finish my thought. So Steve Burrows, when he was on, he had said the same thing. He had alluded that some hospitals have a interdepartmental policy of transparency, accountability, and apology if something were to go wrong. Other hospitals are not. Is this turn, this reform, is it kind of starting with individual hospital systems that have ethics and want to make this change, and they're doing it voluntarily, even though the system supports the old ways of covering up and paying off the insurance company?
I see a covering up. Nothing's changing.
Okay.
I opened up a Facebook page at that time, Justice for Ayer Rubenzer. Mm-hmm. And over the course of time, I had to change it because I changed it to National Organization for Medical Malpractice Victims, and people came out of the woodwork, and veterans came out of the woodwork, complaining about their quality care. I go to Senator Ron Johnson's office, talk to Terry Spanbauer about what's going on. And I said, you got to have cameras in the surgery room. Everybody needs to have a copy of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And by the way, Karen Fravlich said if they did have a camera on the doctor, that they would have prosecuted him. So, but now I'm trying to make some reform. I'm talking to Senator Ron Johnson's office. I don't really know exactly how the system goes. But I talked to Terry Spanbauer, and then 6 months later, Jason Simkowski dies at the Toma VA Hospital. I told Terry Spanbauer, these doctors, when they lose their license, they quickly get them back. And boom, Dr. Candy got his back, and it made the news again. But I called Terry Spanbauer on the phone. I said, do you remember me? He said, yeah. I said, told you so.
Right.
Jason Simkowski died at the Toma VA Hospital. I warned you, and you did not do anything.
And this was a patient of the doctor that had lost his license and then went on to practice in a different state, correct?
Yeah, well, from what I understand, they nicknamed him Dr. Candy. Then he lost Wisconsin, or they yanked his license, and then sometime later, well after the fact, Jason Sikowski dies, he gets the license right back.
It's amazing.
It's unbelievable.
It's amazing to me that it doesn't carry over. I mean, it's very frustrating, and it gets worse. So, I mean, obviously there's been doctors that have been convicted of being killers, not to say that happens often or commonly, but it does happen. It has happened. And how long does that happen before people catch on when you have these kind of things in place? What's more?
Well, right.
Go ahead.
So I'm hearing all sorts of stories right here in Wisconsin even, and I'm calling around to, at the time, Congressman Tom Petri, and different legislators. I said, you need to hear these stories.
Right.
Nope. Tyler Vorpagel, no veteran should ever vote for Tyler Vorpagel. I went to his office when he was the administrator for Tom Petri. I had a mountain of stories. I printed out. Ignore. He's been in office now for all of these years and still has not made one step in the direction of patient safety. And he knew what I told him November 12th, what year was that? 2013. I was at the office and I printed out all this stuff for him. And then after that is when Jason Sikowski dies, and still nothing.
Can I ask you, Wade?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Steve brought up was the Injured Patients Compensation Fund. How much of this is
title.
Well, I agree with that. But how much of this is that we're hearing about? How much of this is a corruption scheme / racket? I have a lot of people that think that's the way it is. Is it that way?
It is the way it is. It's all about money.
So tell me, how does this network work? How is it made up? How is it reinforced? And how did it get to be the way that it is right now? What's the history on that? If anyone can answer it, I think it's you.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything's for profit.
Right.
And the money's not going out the door. So
the fund right now is a $1.5 billion, and we're not paying anything that I know out of it other than a very small practice of a very narrow amount of injured victims, out of that fund. The rest of that money is going to reimburse hospitals for their attorney fees.
Right, and it's their army of lawyers and stuff like that. Now, here's the part the average citizen needs to realize, which I think is fundamentally wrong. It's called the Injured Patient Fund. It's a title that's wrong, and
it's misleading.
They can use that money for lawyers, but we can't. We pay our medical bill, and that medical bill is funding that fund. So therefore, we should be able to take money out of there and provide our own attorney fees, just like theirs. Fair's fair.
Agreed. Instead, if you
laws
don't have money,
you
cannot even bring a case. Nobody's taking contingency cases for medical malpractice. And
no.
And in Wisconsin, it's really bad. For me, you and I talked about the thing that I thought was a smoking gun in my case. My story is long, so I've shared little bits of it throughout my different conversations. But my medical record was edited to the tune of 303 pages, and then 101 that said no data filed. So let me explain that a little more. So there's an edit header that's put in place by software as a safeguard for medical edits. In order to get the level of editing to edit not only your records, but as a doctor, that of another doctor's records, you need an elevation of clearance within your software for the hospital. The only way that can happen is with the administration. So what I experience is this cooperative cover-up where they amended my records, because what initially happened in my case was the software, the EHR, supposedly, or it populates the office computer for the doctor for your medical record is kind of an index without having to go through your voluminous record. And the software was creating erroneous errors that would populate on the problem list and overview. But if you were to actually dig up the record, it wouldn't match. So it would be like saying that you had a broken arm when you had maybe a broken toe, or perhaps, it said that you had your liver removed even though you never had that happen, stupid things like that. HIPAA is supposed to cover that. So HIPAA, that I learned the hard way, because I thought that for me, that was a smoking gun to finally get help, because like you, I faced all this adversity of trying to find a way to get justice for the medical errors and the malpractice. And so then I found that the HIPAA prevents private citizens like you and I from filing suit for violations. Basically, when someone's illegally editing your medical record or tampering with those records, HIPAA is supposed to be your safeguard for that. It's your Health Information Privacy Act. And that has no safeguard other than through maybe your state representative, which can only take your story. So currently, there's no one that really looks at that at all. And as a private citizen, you're refused from taking private action against any kind of those violations. So overall, when we're looking at this racket, and I'm trying to tie this all together, there's several different departments. It's not just in one area. There's been a systematic overhaul of our healthcare, legislative, insurance. There's all these different areas that need reform. How do we get there? To me, I've pulled my hair out and heard these stories, finding out how it works so that we can dismantle it or kind of understand, and then thus are able to hopefully come in armed with knowledge so that we can try to make changes in these areas. That's the only way I think we're going to do it. So off my soapbox pedestal, but what can we know about this system, and where can we try to put our awareness to really start to make a change? Not just, all right, well, this is happening, but like, this is horrible. Where can we really start to assert some focus to get things to change? This has been going on for you since 2003. It's now 17 years. It's a long time.
Well, so like I said, I had a lot of people coming to me because of that Facebook page, and I could not get any state representatives and now Congressman Glenn Grothman to listen. They won't listen.
Right. And
then finally, I was able to get Christine Sinicki to listen, and then I had her meet with one family, Chris Nowakowski, and his wife, and what would happen. And there's a time gap of what they say happened and what's in question.
Mm-hmm.
And if there was cameras in the room, there'd be no discussion. Who
right.
came in the room, when, where, and why, and what time. There's no speculation. The memory.
But you know what I think would happen, Wade? Honestly, even if we got the cameras in, and this is just us talking, it's literally. I take a look at what happened with Epstein. Right, they had cameras all over that prison. All of a sudden, the cameras aren't working. Oh, whoops. Or like in Steve's case, they had a camera in the EICU, but it wasn't on because it's a privacy act, or a privacy violation. There's always these loopholes that they can pull. So even though that's a step, I think, and it's a great step, what else can we do? I mean, what can't they tamper with that we can, or can we create a department that really oversights some of this so that we get accountability? Or is it that we're so corrupt in our government, we'd never be able to get an oversight commission like that?
Well, for up to me, we would, but I'm
agreed. Me too.
I question. I really question if the corruption is so high that the almighty dollar. The problem is you have a lot of money that's in this industry, and therefore, because of the money, it's going to be no money being paid out, and all things are covered.
Right.
And so I lost. I know there's a lot of good doctors and nurses, but the system and the laws are what I have issue with.
Right.
When something goes wrong, They have the ability to tamper and really lie.
Yeah, and flat out lie. It's not as if they're
flat out lie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you know, obviously, the frontline workers I found, for the most part, except for maybe some of the older school tenured doctors that have been acting this way for who knows how long, most of the frontline workers, even in my case, would say, "Oh, this isn't right. I can't believe they did this to you. I can't believe they're doing this," and would try to advocate. But then it stopped as soon as they would get to their administrators, because the administrators have a policy of shoving it underneath the rug or covering it up or whatever. So the frontline workers aren't necessarily wanting to be like that. They're wanting an open, honest, transparent relationship with their patients. But a lot of that is prevented by the administration. There should be, something. I mean, I would think that one of the good things that we could do is to do something along the lines of whistleblower protection, and then also ethics and accountability within our healthcare workers, where if you need to go outside of your organization because of what your organization's doing and they're not following the law, there should be an outlet for somebody like that. Is there currently, if that's what's happening and you're seeing that as a nurse or a doctor and you're asking what to do, Wade, what would you tell them to do?
I don't know at this point, to be honest.
Oh, that's so disheartening. I don't mean to sound like that, but I mean, you've been going through this for almost 20 years and you still don't have that answer. We need to figure that out as a people. And if, to me, if you haven't found that in 20 years, that means that there isn't a place right now. How do we get one?
The death grip, here's the death grip. And that is the hospital association. They are, and these are all these different associations are very, they have a lot of money. So you have these hospital associations, surgical associations, and they have a lot of money, and they pay out for campaign funds. And, whoever the Speaker of the House is, it doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican, they ensure that they have, an avenue to get to them.
So it's the almighty dollar and the lobbyists that create those relationships, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Very frustrating. So let me turn this around just a little bit. You have 4 pieces of legislation that you're working on currently. Are those all for Wisconsin, or are those nationwide?
One of them back in 2015 was for Indiana, but the rest were all for Wisconsin.
And just, I don't want to keep you on forever, but to be brief, in a nutshell, what are those 4 pieces of legislation supporting? What are they trying to change? Because obviously that needs awareness right now as those are trying to be passed. What can we do?
A couple things I want to make sure we get in is I want to just quickly that, and I also don't want to forget to talk about never event.
Nope, that's on my list too.
I fundamentally believe that the conversations between your doctor should be recorded. You should get a memory, and it's stored in the cloud, and you get a copy, hospital gets a copy, insurance company gets a copy, everyone gets a copy. And that includes your surgery. And so
audio and video.
Yep.
I like that.
Yep. Audio and video. And everybody gets a copy. And it's you can use it for a court of law, if needed. Or if you need to, let's say you need to share that with another doctor, you can. Not just for lawsuit, but just, here's where we are. I have a new doctor, and what do you think? But everybody should have that, not just the record. And
right.
So we back in 2015 came up with the surgical black box bill, and it's also the doctor-patient visit black box bill. And
was that the one in Indiana?
In Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
Wisconsin. So we, Indiana too. We got that introduced in 2015. We renewed it, add language to the bill. And then in 2019, late 2019, just recently, we launched Wisconsin Bill 913. And there are, they are people that co-sponsored it, so it's not like just one person, but, the Hospital Association, Surgical Anesthesiologist Association, insurance companies, they just walk in and squash it, and so that's the problem. And, the bad news for them is I'm not going away. So
I like your tenaciousness. And I want to ask real quick too, not to get you sidetracked, but where does that come from? Is that from your family? Is that because of your sister solely, or did some of that come from military? It seems to me that you're a lot like me. You're driven and you do what it takes to get your story out there and raise awareness.
Yeah, it's kind of like this. It's kind of like you show up in a car accident. You can't leave the scene.
Right. You
have to take care of this. And so I just want, this is my solution to what happened to my sister. If this would have been, and the other people too that I've known, if this was installed, and the cameras are there, they are already there. Don't let anybody fool you. They are already there. And, there's a company called Sonic Foundation out of Madison. Now, they've told me point blank that they're there. And, so they don't want you, the patient consumer, to have a copy.
Gotcha. It's just, frustrating.
Yeah.
Never events.
Yeah, it is.
You inspired an upcoming documentary. Your dad also then kind of around the same time, and maybe I'm wrong on this, you can clue me in, wrote a book from basically the journals and the diaries that he wrote as he was going through these experiences with your sister and you and the rest of the family.
Correct.
How did this all culminate? Obviously Dad was an English background. He wrote another book already. To me, it sounds like a healing process for lack of better words.
Well,
I think it's really healthy.
He was advised. He was advised back in 2003 to write a diary, keep a diary.
Okay. By the attorneys that he was.
Yep.
Okay.
And then he just happened to publish them. And then, through all these people come to me, one day I got a phone call from a independent filmmaker, and something happened to her friend. She was asking some advice about what to expect in terms of law.
Right. I
said, "You're nothing. You're not going to get anywhere." So she told me I inspired her to make this documentary. And her friend, obviously, because of what happened to her friend. But they completed it. It's in all these different film festivals, but everything's on hold because of COVID-19.
Right.
But it's going to England. It's already won some awards, but I got to keep kind of mum about that.
Sure.
But it's playing in New York City and, different pockets of the country.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. It's part of the reason why I'm doing this podcast. It's healing for me. It's also a way for me to positively tackle this issue by raising awareness. And ironically, one of the things that I've started to do and I'm putting together is this series of basically the stories behind the people on the front lines, behind the victims, behind the people like you that are trying to make these changes. Like Christine Sinicki, like Steve Burrows. There's a movement happening right now. It's been happening for a while, and we're fighting a multiple-fronted or a multiple-headed enemy, if you will, which is these big business people that are allowing this and ensuring that this continues. For us to knowledge is power. I've always been told that since I was a kid. And the more people we can make aware of what's going on and the higher that knowledge goes in terms of Capitol Hill, hopefully ethics at a certain point overrule big money. I would like to think that's still how our country has the ability to be. Now, I don't always have a lot of faith in that. Sometimes we do a lot of stupid stuff as people, but I have faith that at the end of the day, I mean, I see neighbors around the U.S. and around the world, for that matter, help one another in times of need. And this is a time of need for our listeners that are wanting to do something about this. The only thing that I can recommend that I've found so far is to reach out to your state representatives to support movements like the legislation that you're trying to pass here in Wisconsin, and support the movements of people like Christine Sinicki and the reforms that she brings to Capitol Hill to be voted on. Support those people that support those ideas, support those people that support this reform. It comes down to voting, and at least we have the ability to cast our vote to the people that matter. And I know that voting has been something that's not enough people participate in, especially on the local stuff. But that's really where I think a lot of this movement needs to start. Thoughts?
That's a fact. Yep.
So,
be aware of the laws.
Yeah. So tell me, kind of like Steve, he lost his happy for a while, and he's trying to get that back. How has this impacted you, and how has this impacted your family? And where are you going to go from here?
Ever since, it's never events, once I'm pretty much at ease with myself. Back in the day, I was really, really, really mad about this whole thing. But, having these bills, especially the bills, once they're out there, the people, it makes, I have peace in myself because I know that this is the right thing.
Absolutely.
I got it to this point. Got a documentary that's, going to talk about the surgical black box bill. So I'm very much at ease with myself. And that's, I got kids, I'm happy. But, I'm at peace with myself because I can kind of tell other people, hey, this is what's going on.
Right.
And anytime that I can inform somebody, I've done my job.
How about your mom and dad? How are they doing? A lot of time's gone by. Are they feeling the same way with these legislative bills? Is it at least kind of going towards a happy ending in a way?
Yeah, I think you lose a child, you'll never be at peace with yourself.
No.
But I think that since it makes them feel better that their daughter had a cause,
right?
And that, look, there's a documentary on this and there's bills, so I think they're happy in that way.
Yeah.
I think that's healing for them. But they're, all I want to do really at this point, my dad he's older now, much older, and I just want to get him to a point that he can see this documentary.
Right.
It's going to be on the big screen.
You'll be a very proud father.
Yeah, his book is actually in the documentary. And so I can say, my dad really wanted this book to be a movie.
Sure.
It's just a crazy story.
Right.
And there's other things too that we didn't talk about that when people hear you, like, really? But, to be able to say to him, look, I got your book on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
Will be my, showing my gratitude toward him as a dad.
I like that.
I want him to have that legacy.
Yeah. That's a good close to that chapter. Life, I think, is all about chapters, and we all go through hell in one way or another, and it's how we deal with it. Some people that aren't sound mind go off the deep end. Other people like you and I, we investigate, we try to do whatever possible. We try to talk to every person possible. In the process of that, it's become a story. And it's one that has a small voice in itself, but when you add them to everybody else's voice, it's hard not to pay attention. So I personally, connected with your story. I connected with, your family. I've been there, going through these interviews. I hear coming out of you folks the same things that I experienced, and it's validating because it shows that it's across the board. It's a systematic approach rather than just an individualized one, and it's something that we can change. We just have to get the right people in to do that. Is there anything else that I can bring up? I'm going to share some links in the description for anything that you want to send me to help support some of these movements or causes.
I'll send you over a link to the bill so people can read it.
Okay, perfect.
And then I'll also send over a link to the trailer for Never events.
Okay, that would be great.
And
how can people find that? So it's out and about in certain places right now. Is it somewhere like Amazon Prime, or is there a way that people can buy that or actually be able to get it? Okay.
Not yet. It goes, the way it kind of works is that it goes to the film festivals first.
Okay. And
then after that, distributors pick it up. Like let's just say HBO or Netflix, or, somebody may want it,
sure,
a distributor. And then it just kind of rolls from there.
Right on.
But everything's on hold because of this COVID. I mean, it was supposed to kick off March 28th at the International Women's Film Festival, but it got put on hold. So, it's going to Hollywood Verge Film Festival, Hollywood Screen Films Festival, New York Movie Awards Film Festival. There's one over in England too, and I forget the name of it, Ragstad or something like that. But it's going to be rolling here.
Well, I wish nothing but the best for that. I hope everybody possible can see that and support that. Again, these are your documentary, Steve's documentary. It's the face of this movement, and the frontline people like Christine Sinicki and people that are on the Hill that have the power to try to present these things. It's a struggle for them. If it was easy, they would have passed this a long time ago. There's what I feel like is a majority that that controls everything. That I feel like people like us, Wade, I feel like are the minority when it comes to Capitol Hill. It's the majority that wins, and that's why things stay this way. The only thing I can say is, it comes down to a vote. It comes down to at least going out and supporting our local elections and getting the right people in. Is there anything else?
That is correct.
Is there anything else that you want to add to that, or anything else that we need to mention? Okay.
No, I think you pretty much, tapped in and got it all.
I appreciate that, buddy. I want to say thank you. So it's people like you, it's people like Steve, it's people like Christine, it's people like all these other frontline workers in the hospitals that are trying to do the right thing. It's people like us that are going to make this change. And the more of us that can rally together and create a voice that's unified, the stronger we're going to be. And so I thank you for the 20 years that you put in so far. I thank you for your father and your mother's 20 years that they put in, along with your other sister. And from the bottom of my heart, I wish that you would never have lost your sister Julie, but at least like Steve, she is continuing to be a teacher and is now, we remember her all these years later, and we won't forget.
Awesome. Good words. And then, sorry you had to go through your situation as well.
It's this that's going to change that, right? It's talking to people like you. It's shedding the light that needs to be shed on the things that need to change. And, aside from that, it's up to all of us to enact, to vote, and really, that's the only way that this is going to change. As cliche as that sounds, or as non-important to some people as I've heard they seem to think their vote is, it does count. And when you have this kind of money promoting these kind of things, it's hard to fight that. But it's
that right.
It's this grass movement stuff that we're doing, and things that you've already done, and things that people like Christine and the rest are doing that are going to just make this change. So I have to believe in that, and I thank you for it. So with that said, I want to thank you for coming on my podcast. I wish you the best of days, and stay in touch.
Likewise.
All right. Thanks, Wade. You have yourself a great day.
Hey, bye for now.
All right. Bye for now. Bye.
Bye now.
Well, I'd like to thank Wade Ayer for coming on Digital Voices. His story is inspiring, one that I think we can all relate to. Again, these are the faces behind the movement. These are the stories behind why we need the change. And it's people like Wade, it's people like Christine, it's people like Steve, it's people like me that are trying to get through to people like you to get involved, shed your vote, support these causes and these reforms that affect every one of us. The sooner that we can change this, the healthier we're going to be as a people. And remember, if you're in this medical error situation, the best thing to do is to reach out to your state representatives currently. They're the fighters for us. Make sure you elect the right fighter to get in and fight for you. Have a great day.